It's time to review Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars Director's Cut for the PC. Released back in 1996 as the fourth game to be developed by Charles Cecil's adventure gaming studio Revolution, Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars was the first mainstream game to tackle the idea of religious conspiracy thrillers long before the likes of Dan Brown got into the industry, and has become one of the most beloved point-and-click adventure games ever made thanks to its beautiful graphics, in-depth plot, and welcoming cast of characters. This particular version, the Director's Cut, made available on Steam, the Nintendo Wii and DS, is an enhanced port that adds, among other things, new playable sections, a hint system, improved graphics, and beyond. As someone who missed out on the original version of Broken Sword back in the day, will this port give me the definitive experience? Well, pack your bags everyone, because we're off to solve this crazy conspiracy. Let's begin! While out on a vacation in Gay Paris, American patent lawyer George Stobart is checking out the local cuisine when his peaceful morning is suddenly interrupted by an explosive accordion courtesy of a clown that escapes from the clutches of the law. Though quite baffled at this discovery, George is even more bewildered when it's revealed by local journalist Nico Collard that the clown has killed important men before under the alias of the Costume Killer. As they investigate the matter in order to avenge the trench coat wearing man killed in the explosion and bring the killer clown to justice, George and Nicole stumble upon a global mystery spanning hundreds of years that not only may lead to the forgotten secrets of the long dead Order of the Templars, but may change the world forever if they cannot prevent those responsible in time. Broken Sword is a 2D point-and-click adventure game in which you talk to people, use items gathered on your journey, explore locations, and solve puzzles in order to progress through the story. You move around by hovering the cursor over where you want to go and left-clicking on it. This thing can be done for when you wish to talk to someone, examine a certain area, and so on. Occasionally there will be two different actions highlighted on the same area, with the center prompt being accessed with the left click and the one on the right with a right click. Just below the screen you can also access a diary that recaps what's happened so far in case you need a refresher, an inventory system where you can use items you found, combine them or show them to people you come across, and a hint system that'll help you out if you're stumped on what to do next. Since it's a point-and-click adventure game, there's not much else to the gameplay itself, meaning that we'll have to get started on the strengths and weaknesses a little earlier. Starting with the Director's Cut changes, it enhances the overall experience by giving you optional help if you so need it thanks to the hints and diary, as well as new playable sections that make the world of Broken Sword even more intriguing than before, making this the definitive version of the game to buy. However, it's not perfect. You can't pause the game when you exit the tab, meaning you'll have to sit through long periods of dialogue in order not to be able to miss what's going on while checking other tabs, and the volume can be unbalanced enough at certain points where the music makes the dialogue very difficult to hear at times. Sure, this can be manually adjusted, but it's still annoying that the burden of the volume balance has to be dumped onto the player. As for the actual game itself, the game is a very relaxed pace that mostly concerns itself with tons of dialogue above puzzles, which can understandably make it quite a slog to play through for those who prefer quicker games with more puzzle solving to them. And while there are a few of those sprinkled throughout the game, a few of them can be a bit too obtuse or annoying to suffer through at times. And finally, while the story is quite interesting, it can become a bit too convoluted to the point where it's fairly easy to lose track of where everything fits every now and again. Not a deal breaker since the gist of it is still quite simple to grasp, but it's a bit exasperating figuring out what the big connection between the last two locations you visited was when there's so much plot being dumped onto you. Otherwise, however, I'd say that Broken Sword is good enough to break past those flaws and hold up as a very good game with a lot going for it. While there's a slight disconnect between the old sprites and the new ones made for the Director's Cut, the graphics are utterly beautiful with nicely animated characters, fantastically done cutscenes that are a treat to watch, and wonderfully drawn backgrounds that draw you into the several locations you travel to over the 10 or so hours of length. In addition, the soundtrack is a highlight for a very unusual reason. The general feeling of the fantastically orchestrated music evokes a sense of nostalgia for those games that felt like proper adventures, even if you've never actually grown up with those adventures in the first place, with such songs as the Ireland theme, the Hotel Ubu Suite, and the song that plays when you're about to go exploring as being the biggest examples of this. Added on to this is some frankly incredible voice acting. As someone who'd played the voiceless DS version first, I was simply stunned to find how much the voice cast managed to make already amusing jokes even funnier, lend a charmingly cheesy feel for several characters, and overall enhance the impact of the dialogue tenfold. If there's any game that can prove that not all voice acting in 90s gaming sucked, this is the one to do it. Thankfully, this is one of those games in which the plot is actually good enough to be complemented by the voice acting. With a large cast of eccentric, unforgettable characters, the complex story is quite interesting with many twists and turns along the way that'll keep you guessing as to where you're going to head to next or what the true purpose of some of your items are. This is also backed up by a very subtle but nevertheless fantastic sense of humor that mostly deals with banter and the odd snark. Though it isn't a laugh-a-minute fest like Monkey Island or Ace Attorney, nor is it as varied in its comedic set pieces, There's always a nice gem hiding within each conversation that makes talking to everyone and showing them literally everything in your pants absolutely worth it. And lastly, the gameplay is really good with an intuitive interface that makes it easy to do what you need to do, puzzles that don't feel very contrived or silly to solve, and with little in the way of technical errors to stop you from enjoying the rest of the awesome experience. In conclusion, Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars Director's Cut is the definitive version of a classic filled with wonderful graphics, fantastically nostalgic music, incredible voice acting, a very solid plot, a brilliant undertone of humor, and overall really well done gameplay. However, it's let down by some small errors in volume balance and accessing other tabs, the occasional irritating puzzle, plot revelations that can be dumped into the player too quickly, and a very relaxed sense of pace that'll bore some. However, if you're a fan of classic point-and-click adventure games, very easygoing adventures, or games with well-written dialogue, I highly recommend you get Shadow of the Templars, particularly in the Broken Sword trilogy available on Steam that contains the first two sequels, Smoking Mirror and Sleeping Dragon. Speaking of which, I better get started on Smoking Mirror and see if it's any good. I hope you enjoyed watching my review for Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again, have a great day, y'all!